Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Bottger, and welcome back to another great episode of Chris Bottger's Album Club. As usual, of course, we will be doing two albums today, talking about what we liked and didn't like, and also comparing the two and seeing which one we liked better. As usual, with me I have Ben.
Wake up, kids. We've got the dreamer's disease.
Matthew.
Doom!
And Fan.
Hello.
Alright, you all ready to hear what today's albums are?
Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, now I actually have not generated the pairing yet. I have the list plugged in right now, and I am going to have the orangey pick here on real time. So this time, not even I know what we're going to get. Let's see. Interesting, okay. The albums are Titanic Rising by Weyes Blood. I don't know how to say that. If anyone knows, please help me out here. Anyone know how this is said?
Weyes blood.
Weyes Blood. Okay, thank you, Matthew. And the second album is ABBA The Album by ABBA. So, interesting pairing. First reactions, we're going to start with you, Ben. What are your thoughts on this pairing?
I have no clue what the first one even is, and have never heard of it.
It's Titanic Rising, Ben. You don't know about the Titanic? It's going to rise back up out of the ocean.
True.
I have no clue if that's what it's about or not.
I mean, obviously, there are some really good songs on ABBA the album. I like specifically the name of the game and Take a Chance on Me. Those are like those are in probably the top 10 ABBA songs for me. So, I think I like the better than even some of them most famous. So, I mean, those are also very famous songs, but even some of the even more famous one, like I think I like the better than Mamma Mia, for instance. Oh, Fernando. So yes, I approve of this pairing. Well, maybe I shouldn't. Oh, and also it's Hole in Your Soul. I like that song too. There's only 3 songs that I could just looking at the checklist. I'm like, yes, these are great songs on ABBA the album. I have no clue what Titanic Rising by Weyes Blood is, and
Weyes blood.
What?
why. I mean, I don't know who or what that is. It sounds like a metal band. Is that a metal band? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, Titanic. Like, I think we could have a song about. I mean, an album, like a concept album about a Titanic by a metal band. That sounds pretty good. You know, we associate with Titanic was kind of like violining music and or one of the band from the Titanic, of course, and whatever. But it was the Titanic's band playing obviously is real life, but some of that like we associate from a movie and we associate with Celine Dion, and that's understandable. But like, it is also metal, like a big metal Hulk hitting an iceberg. You know, a metal album. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
Alright. Matthew, initial thoughts?
I have heard of Titanic Rising, and I have heard of the band ABBA. I will say that as much.
Alright, so you've never heard either one of these albums before then?
Yes, I have heard of Titanic Rising, and I have heard of the band ABBA.
Now, I'm asking if you've heard the albums, not if you've heard of them.
Yes, I've heard of them.
But you haven't listened to either album.
I have listened to one of these albums. I have not listened to the other.
Okay. Cryptic for some reason. Fan?
Well, never heard of Titanic Rising, but it looks like it could be a cool kind of singer-songwriter thing. Always into that, so that should be fun. And of course, I've listened to a lot of ABBA in my life, so I'm excited for that too.
Alright, sweet. As for me, well, I I have heard of Titanic Rising by Weyes Blood before, but only because I, of course, have access to the list we're picking the albums off of, so I know its name just because someone put it on the list, obviously, but that's all I really know about it. No clue what it is. I don't think it's metal. I think I looked it up at the time, just I was like, what is this? Someone was adding to the list, and I don't think it was metal. But I couldn't tell you what it was. Fan says it's single songwriter. I assume he looked that up. So yeah.
I just looked at the album cover and I'm guessing.
Okay. Well, that's more than I know. As for ABBA The Album, I own ABBA The Album on vinyl. Good album. I'll talk more about it at length probably in the back half of this video, but let it be said that I have listened to this album before. Alright, we're going to go listen to these albums now, and we'll be right back with our thoughts on them. Alright, we are back, and we have listened to the albums now. And the first album was, of course, Titanic Rising by... I forgot how to say it, but Matthew, how do you say it again?
Weyes Blood.
Thank
Weyes.
you. It's Titanic Rising by Weyes Blood. So it's been a hot second since we filmed the beginning of this video. And we're going to start with you, Ben. What were your thoughts on this album?
I thought this album was pretty good. And I don't know if it's just a thing about how albums are structured, because albums do tend to be structured to front load a lot of the times. But as usual, I feel like I'm going to be talking about the first three songs. And especially what stood out the most to me, A Lot's Gonna Change, Andromeda, and Everyday. Their production, especially A Lot's Gonna Change, production kind of reminded me of that of the kind of like a 70s, like, I mean, it's a level heavy production. If somebody wanted to say that this production was too much, I couldn't really blame them. It does have like a lot of strings and whatever on it. I say the production's a little bit better on that job. Well, better. No, I thought it worked on A Lot's Gonna Change pretty well. I thought the mixing and stuff was good in a way that this made this work. Everyday, I think, was the one with the strongest production on it. It reminded me kind of ELO, or, I mean, especially towards, and I don't believe this could be a coincidence, like A Day in the Life. The way the mixing in this album as a whole reminds me a lot of the Beatles, or ELO taking up the Beatles. And that really works the most notably well on Everyday, in my opinion. In terms of actual songwriting, no, she's not really like the Beatles. She's more, singer-songwriter-y, kind of like, James Taylor, or more notably, Carole King. Her singing style and her writing both remind me of Carole King, which has an interesting thing with this kind of Beatles-y production. I think makes it interesting and a richer lesson than it would have been otherwise. And they do actually pair fairly well together. Well, more than fairly well. They pair well together. But it's somewhat hard to say why that works, other than her style is kind of retro. I mean, there's some country references in there, but it's not really country. With this Beatles, and of course I have a pro-Beatles bias, so this George Martin-y production works well for me. It's like, yes, it's a lot more interesting than many of those singer-songwriter albums are. For me, because of that.
Alright, Matthew, it's your turn next.
I think this was a really good album by this is a very good album. I think the standouts for me in Titanic Rising, and I have written it down, is A Lot's Gonna Change, Andromeda, Everyday, Movies, Mirror Forever, Picture Me Better, and I would also say Hero to Thee. I really like it's kind of like basically like kind of a weird homage to like Joni Mitchell and the Carpenters, which like you can basically tell that her voice sounds very reminiscent of Joni Mitchell, which I had a like the past had gone through a big Joni Mitchell phase. Like I was just listening to her albums, which I highly recommend. And I think this album does like a really good job in telling on a variety of themes. Particularly one is talks about climate change, and it's just like very good. It's like one of the best albums that came out in 2019.
All right, Van, what were your thoughts on this album?
Alright, so whenever I first heard we were doing this, I never heard of the record, and I saw the album cover and saw the just like the singer-songwriter genre and stuff, and I got high hopes, and this actually exceeded my hopes. I thought this was a really great album. It's very dark, very cold, self-isolating is kind of how I interpreted a lot of it. Very kind of like 70s sounding record, 70s, maybe early 80s, very cold synth, not like the kind of party Prince type stuff, but the more Kraftwerk type vibe from the synth, things like that. Lots of great instrumentation. This album actually reminded me a lot of an album called Lighthouse by I'm the Morning, another female song, very piano driven, dark, isolating album, with just kind of brooding themes, things like that. So I thought this was a really great album. I'm really happy I got to listen to it.
Okay, well, it's my turn, and I'll say that I didn't think this album was very good. To me, it was kind of like to Kill a King or something like that. What I said the Black Crowes album we did a while back was to something like 70 Southern Rock. It's kind of like the kind of uninspired, less good knockoff. It's just a kind of meh sort of thing. I mean, I think on this album, there wasn't anything particularly grating or annoying on it, but there wasn't anything that really stood out to me. It was just kind of a dredge of kind of like uninspired material to uninspired material. I do think tracks 3 Every Day and tracks 4 Something to Believe were the best, but it's not really saying all that much, because even them I don't really plan on listening to ever again. It's just, nothing really stood out to me. It's just like, yeah, it's like an album that like wants to be seen as artsy and is kind of like an award bait thing, but without any actual new or unique ideas of its own.
How?
I don't know, it just seemed really bland to me. It was
It was going to be of a day of your life. Like, in a sense, maybe it's drunk too much on that, but it's just like, you have a day of a life.
I didn't find it like original at all. I just found it kind of
I think kind of retract that. I think a lot of music, there's a lot of music that is original and yet isn't good, but then there's like a lot of music that is very reminiscent of like previous eras that are like really good. And I think that this album is like reminiscent to kind of like, as I mentioned, to like Joni Mitchell and the Carpenters, and even a lot of like, I believe like female-led singer-songwriter artists back in the 70s, and yet it stands on its own. It's very artistic and kind of like a one of a kind, and I think kind of respectfully disagree about the negatives that were said about this album.
Yeah, and more importantly, on Matthew's point, or to synthesize it with my point, it's not just that it has production that reminds me of the Beatles and ELO, which it does to some extent. I'm not gonna say it's as good as those, but it does remind me of them. But more importantly, it's taking that and it's taking this kind of Joni Mitchell, Kill a King. I said the Carpenters, I'm not so sure, but those kind of two elements of music and is working them together well.
Okay, listen, it's not that I dislike particularly unoriginal music. There's plenty of unoriginal music I do like. I like Rush's False album, for example. It's probably my favorite Rush album. I like Only Stone Temple Pilots, even though that's very derivative of Pearl Jam. But the problem with this is I just didn't find anything well enough done or interesting enough to really hold my attention when I could be listening to those other older, better things like Tapestry. There just wasn't anything here to actually make me listen to it. It was just meh.
I I disagree that none of the songs. I think Andromeda is like probably the best song of the album. It's a very spaced out kind of feeling. You're kind of like it's like an out of body experience, and I think that's like what this album is. And it's like very moody, like due to like the subject matters that it is tackling. I think you can't really go like happy go lucky, like having a very pop rock type of feel. You have to basically have it be reminiscent of like 70s rock and like mention of the people that we have mentioned, which is funny when Ben said that it was reminding of the Beatles and at ELO. I thought that was kind of fascinating. I think I kind of see that. But I think that um, the point of there wasn't a song that wasn't memorable is kind of I disagree with that point.
Yeah, and I mean, in recent years, I mean, this is not always true, but in recent years, it feels like a lot of production has become more minimalistic, but obviously there's exceptions. But we've had a lot more minimalistic production compared to what is on this. In some cases, that's fine. I mean, it's more complicated hip hop. A lot of the work is in the production, but even then, it's trended towards minimalism. Kendrick Lamar accepted. This album, on the other hand, has moved towards a more, I mean, some people call it Baroque, but I would say more. I mean, in the sense that Baroque pop is related to the Beatles, yeah, but I would say more Sgt. Pepper-y. I mean, it reminded me of Sgt. Pepper's, and it reminded me of ELO's production. Those are kind of the main things. So, yeah, I mean, it's deriving from them, sure, but it adds a lot more interest to its sound, to me, than if it had standard production for its time. And I think that that's worth noting.
Yeah, I think the production was exceptional. Really, I think it was. It really captured the feel of what they were going for, and it was kind of lush in its own kind of way. I gotta agree with Matthew and Ben on that. That I think it was much better than most production I've heard off of any album from that decade of the 2010s.
Well, I'll agree there. Train 10's production usually sucks, and this does sound much better, but still, good production just doesn't make the songs that memorable to me.
I think there are like a couple of productions that of the 2010s that are like really good, but I think this Titanic Rising is probably like if not the best production, probably like because you have like Kendrick Lamar albums like To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City, or even some say like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. But I think this is definitely like one of the best productions uh, of like the 2010s. Like if it's not number one, it's definitely probably in your top five, or even more top 10.
Alright, unless anyone has anything else to say about Wise Blood, we're going on to ABBA The Album. We're going to start, as usual, with you, Ben.
ABBA The Album, released by John Lennon.
ABBA The Album, released by Chris Cornell.
ABBA the Alba. ABBA the Alba, released by Morrissey.
True. ABBA The Album is a good album. In some ways, it's harder for me to dissect it than the Titanic Rising album, in that I had one, even though I'm pretty sure I said at the beginning of this episode that I had not listened to it before. Listening to it was like, yeah, I've listened to it before. But even if I hadn't, so many of the songs on it are already so familiar to me. Like Take a Chance on Me, The Name of the Game, All in Your Soul. Those are just so familiar to me that it's hard to analyze them. They're just like songs that exist. But, so in some ways my analysis is going to be more limited. I'm just like, these are good songs that I remember listening to as a child. But I do think this album is a fairly ambitious piece. ABBA at times has had a frivolous reputation. They'll pop. But, I mean, that's always been kind of complicated, though. Like, for instance, Kurt Cobain was a big fan of ABBA. It's all in a more complicated thing. And, he was a rock snob, so he saw it in a kind of a complicated form of music. And I think that this album is a good way of illustrating that. For instance, the last part is a mini musical, I guess it's called, which is, I mean, on the one hand, it's more like the King's attempts to do musicals than, say, The Wall. And I mean, I do think it's better than the King's. Maybe it's probably better than most of the King's attempts to do musical. No matter how much I love the Kings. It's more fragmentary as well, but that probably works for its in its favor. I'm a Marionette in particular is a pretty strong song, but it does have kind of 3 snapshots of emotion that I think works well. I mean, the rest of the album is a bunch of successful pop songs, or pop rock songs, I guess in some of these cases, like All in Your Soul. They're all good songs. I like them, but in that sense, the rest of the album is kind of more of an ABBA album than the a little bit more ambitious endpoint. So I think altogether this album was quite good, but as I said, it's a little harder for me to analyze because of its familiarity.
Alright, Matthew, what were your thoughts on this album?
I thought this album was fine. I've heard of ABBA. I've liked plenty of their songs. But listening to it, it kind of got derivative. Like it's okay. It's like decent. I think ABBA is. You get with ABBA what you get. You're not really gonna get like a Led Zeppelin or even of the kind of pop rock area that they hold. They're not really like Wings or ELO or any of like the big name pop rock. They're like it's pleasant to the ears. I think it isn't like you'll hear it. You'll probably hear it once. You may hear it again, but if not, it's not like not a pleasant experience. I think the big one from this album is of course Take a Chance on Me. I had when I was listening to One Man, One Woman, I was thought of a funny joke about it, but then I didn't say anything. But yeah, it's a decent album.
Well, guys, there you have it. He thought of a joke, but he's not going to tell it. Alright, Van, it's your turn.
Okay, so I really like this album a lot. It kind of felt like ABBA very much pushing the limits of the sound, of course, with the musical at the end, but also just like tunes like the Eagle, very much kind of pushing towards that progressive rock, art rock sound that I think that the guys, the music was pretty interested in at that point. It almost sounds like the kind of like a frustrated pop band trying to push the envelope as far as they can while still making a ton of money, basically. So I thought there was a lot of great moments. Of course, there's the classic pop tunes like Take a Chance on Me, that kind of thing, but also more, things that push the limits of what they were doing at that time and just really pretty much what a lot of pop bands were doing that kind of thing in the 70s, really pushing, but this felt like them really kind of going as hard as they can while still making a great pop album. So I thought it was a really enjoyable experience. I've listened to a lot of ABBA songs. I never actually listened to full albums, so it was nice to kind of just sit down and digest an entire work of theirs. So I think it was a very good album.
It's my turn, and I mean, I quite like this album. As I said earlier, I think I have it on vinyl. It's a great album. It's ABBA's best. It's got many of their best songs, I think. It's got Eagle, great album opener there. One of the more underlooked ABBA songs, I think. You've got Take a Chance on Me, that's great. You got... I'm not as big of a fan as One Man, One Woman, despite being like one of their bigger songs, I guess.
I think that's a very obvious reason why we're not a fan of One Man, One Woman.
It's a song, it's just like, okay, I guess. I mean, it's still pretty good, but it's just not my favorite. Then you got The Name of the Game. That's probably my favorite on the album. You've got Move On. That's pretty good. Hole in Your Soul. That's one of ABBA's best, most overlooked songs. You got Thank You for the Music, which is also great. I Wanted Departure and I'm Marionette are also both pretty good, although they aren't my absolute favorite level, but they're still good, like, album tracks. But you look at like the great stuff here. You got Eagle, you got Take a Chance on Me, you got Name of the Game, got Hole in Your Soul, you got Thank You for the Music. Those all like top tier, like 70s kind of pop rock, poppy songs. And some people I know these days, and even like in like the 80s and 90s, tended to deride ABBA as just pop, but they all really pop rock, in my opinion. I know some other people said that as well, like Matthew. And this album, I think, is probably the best. It's just got great song selection throughout, really. Very solid, and it's got many of the best songs.
Oh yeah, to tag on a comment based off of what Critical said, I would like to say that The Name of the Game is the song that I like the best on this album.
Alrighty, now we're going on to which album we liked better. Now, I think my opinion is probably pretty clear by now, but I think some other people, especially fan, have been a bit more vague as to their preference, so it should be interesting to see how we vote. Ben, we'll start with you. Which album did you like better?
That's actually a difficult question this time. I probably still liked ABBA, the album, a little bit better, just because a lot of it is songs that I already knew and liked. But I really did appreciate Titanic Rising as well. But Veg does have to go to ABBA anyway.
Matthew?
Titanic Rising. I wasn't bored listening to the Titanic Rising again. It was an album I was well acquainted with. Just one of the best albums of that year of 2019, and yeah, that's all I have to say.
Fan?
So actually, as we came into this recording, I still didn't even know what I was going to pick, because it was like I didn't know I liked them both about equally, so it took me till we had this discussion to pick what I think is a better album, and I'm going to go with Titanic Rising. I don't think it's necessarily any better. I just think, I guess it just inspired me a little bit more, I suppose. So I'm gonna go with that one because I think it's a really great experience to listen to. So I think I'll give it its due.
Alright, and as for me, I am of course voting for ABBA The Album for reasons I think I've already laid out pretty well throughout this video. And with that, this is a tie. It's 2-2. Matthew and Fan voted for Titanic Rising. Me and Ben voted for ABBA. And that's about it. So now we're moving on to who picked what album. So does anyone here want to guess who picked what?
Chris or Ben picked the ABBA-Album.
I think we all know who picked Titanic Rising.
Alright. Titanic Rising was picked by Matthew, and ABBA The Album was picked by me. Probably not too surprising there. Anyhow, at the end of the video, I do want to remind all my viewers to please like and subscribe. It really does help all of us out a lot. We enjoy doing this. So once again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.